All right, I'm ready to begin.
Woo!
Woo! So first of all, I just want to say, honestly, it's an honor to be a part of this community. It's an honor to be a part of Open Computers. It's been great working with everybody, and I hope to continue to make great improvements to OpenOS, and maybe one day make some improvements to the rest of the code if I stop getting scared of all the crazy Scala stuff that's out there. So I would say my time working with mods in Minecraft has mainly been as a hoster of mod packs and private servers. I work in my own time as a C++ developer, and I had a big interest in Open Computers for the interface that kind of the computer interface that it gave me to the Minecraft world. And my interest in improving OpenOS first began with wanting to make it more Bash-like, wanting to look at the standard input-output so that I could write some remote shell code and things like that. And I continued to find little things deep inside the code that I needed to tweak. And then at one point it just kind of, I snapped and I messaged Sangar and I said, I'd like to make a lot of changes. And his response was basically, well, just start making the changes and we'll see if we like them. And most of the stuff I wanted to do, I think, was received well. Some of the stuff started to get a little bit too complex, wasn't really the experience that Open Computers are trying to provide, so we tried to stay away from those things. I learned a lot about what I think Sangar wants out of this mod, and I definitely hope that what I've done has improved the experience for everybody. So yeah. Anyways, that's my little
You're
intro.
awesome!
Thanks. I definitely don't want to take the spotlight. This to me is the community's mod, and Sangar is the creator. But I thought if I were to put my name anywhere, maybe it would just be this presentation. But anyways, let's move on. Did we take the keyboard off? No.
Something happened.
There we go. Okay, it's working. So this presentation will cover two main things. What is OpenOS 1.6? What have I seen or heard about OpenOS or Open Computers in the tutorial spotlights or even in the forums that's inaccurate, incomplete? But as I try to answer that second question, it's a huge topic. What's incomplete or what's been inaccurate? And so I had this slide up to point people to the efforts that we're doing outside of just this presentation. Definitely there's been work done on OCDoc to improve the documentation. It's an ongoing effort. It's come a long way, I would say, in the last month or two before BTM. We have the forums, and we also have the OC channel on Espernet, where, usually people are mostly kind. It's a good place to hang out. Ask your questions. You get to meet some other developers that have worked on this project and people who have a lot of experience. And sometimes, I believe, as Fox has seen, it's just dead quiet. He seems to have the luck to come in there when there's nobody hanging out. But this talk, I think, will focus on just some of the experiences people have wanted out of Open Computers, perhaps what they didn't quite understand, and then some things that are new in OpenOS. I guess that should be what the focus is what does OpenOS 1.6 bring? So the first image that I have here is a highlight effect that's built into the cases when you mouse over a component, and you'll see the slots that it can go into. So Open Computers deals with 3 tiers, 1, 2, and 3, and you can see that with the Roman numerals. This has been talked about in other presentations and other tutorials, but there's a couple of things about this that I felt were worth bringing up. So I'll just cover it quickly. When trying to figure out what components can fit into a computer case, the tier number in Roman numeral in the slots will tell you what will fit. When you mouse over a component like a GPU or a CPU or even a hard drive, it has its own tier, and it will highlight it in the case for you to let you know. So a tier 1 case will have, now I have to check my notes because for time I cut out some of the slides, so one second. Okay, so in the tier 1 case we have the options for tier 1 components. The tier 2 case is tier 2 and anything less. So whenever it acts like a minimum. So when the case says, say, Roman numeral 2, that's the best it can hold. This is the tier 1 case image. It can only hold tier 1 things. Let's go through the next slide. I'm going to kind of skip ahead. Now here we have a demonstration of a rack. All these are server blades. They're a little bit more advanced as far as cases are concerned. And they have better allowances. And here we have the tier 1 GPU. The reason I wanted to bring it up was one of the things that I've sometimes misheard was when people are trying to set up their computers, there's a slight misunderstanding about what this screen can show. And the tier 1 GPU, or the different tiers of GPU, as you increase, they can do better graphics and higher resolution, but that will be limited or throttled by the screen. So a tier 1 GPU can bind to any screen, 1, 2, or 3. And a tier 3 GPU can bind to any screen as well. But the screen will limit what it can do. So if you're trying to do high resolution graphics, or if you're trying to do multiple colors, then that's limited by whatever is least between the two. You need a higher GPU and a higher screen. But let's talk back about memory. So here we have an image of all the memory types, tier 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, and 3.5. And these 0.5 memory tiers are a huge help for people who are trying to get more memory out of their system but don't want or have limitations on what tiers they can use. So the 0.5 tiers will fit in the equivalent whole number tier. So for example, the second one is the tier 1.5 memory stick, and it provides about 50 or 60, about 60K more memory. So it's 64 actually, 64K more memory than the tier 1 equivalent, but it still fits in the tier 1 slot. And this is important because if you're going for tier 1 slots, that tier 1 memory is extremely limited. One of the first experiences that our new users will probably have is they're going to build all tier 1 equipment. I think one of the expectations is I can build everything out of tier 1 stuff just to get going with this mod, because I think in other mods you start at tier 1, and in open computers that's an option, but you don't have to start at tier 1. And if everything is tier 1, you might have a bad experience because you're going to run out of memory soon. And that's actually one of the big things that I wanted to talk about during this presentation, is the memory improvements that OpenOS has made. So in OpenOS 1.6, the memory requirements have been heavily optimized. When I first started working on OpenOS, it was quickly brought to my attention that memory is a serious matter for open computers in the community. Improving OpenOS for 1.5 to 1.6 was going to be far more complex than just making Linux-like or GNU-like changes to the shell. I wonder, yeah, in fact, I have in my notes Vexatos. He was definitely the one that had the most to say about our memory limitations. So the goal was made to provide at least 50K of memory for the shell once the operating system had booted. So I started doing some profiling and some memory measurements, and I found that OpenOS 1.5 boots to shell consuming, it needs 206K. So on a 1.5 tier memory stick, OpenOS 1.5 had 50K free. So in other words, this goal that we had of memory left me with 0 bytes to upgrade OpenOS 1.6. So we started at 0. I could not add anything to OpenOS that would take away from that memory. So the first thing to do was profiling. Lots of instrumented builds that I made of OpenOS to try to figure out all the places that memory was consumed during boot, which libraries were essential, what things. It was Open installed PyoTest. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I didn't even put in the notes to mention. Thanks, Vexatos. The development of OpenOS also included about 1,300 unit tests, and that was interesting as well. Anyways, so after all the profiling, or I should say during all of the work, continued to profile the refactors. So optimizing OpenOS code had to do with moving libraries out of the boot path, optimizing functions, and one of the biggest things I learned is that with Lua, you're going to do it. Oh, I'm getting pinged. Sorry, I don't have a window. Oh, what is OpenOS? That's a good question. I kind of didn't even have a slide for that. The operating system that we expect our users to use on open computers, or I should say that the core operating system, is OpenOS. There are other options. People are making some pretty amazing operating systems, and that's, if I may say, one of the challenges I've had in trying to describe OpenOS is I don't want to say it's the only or the operating system for open computers, because open computers absolutely functions without OpenOS. You can have your own. You can write your own EEPROM. You can use Plan 9K by Magic, for example, or MinOS. This is just one of the loot disks, and all the documentation I would say on OCDoc assume you're using OpenOS. So if I ever make it sound like this is the gold standard operating system, I apologize. It's just this is the one that our documentation expects people are using. That is all. So that's OpenOS. Anyways, memory optimizations was a pretty big deal. It took a lot of work, and one of the biggest things I learned about Lua was that it's not going to save you memory when you might expect it to. I continue to see, oh, this function isn't even necessary. I can take out this function and write it all inline, or this loop is probably costing some memory, or creating this table. So many times I was wrong. Being in a virtual environment with Lua, it was a lot of surprises. So it's all about profiling. If you yourself are trying to write your own optimized code, or you're trying to write some type of microcontroller in open computers and you're on the memory edge, profile, because your assumptions probably are wrong. But yeah, it was an awesome experience in the end. Okay, before I go on to the next topic, the thing I wanted to mention about the optimizations of OpenOS, when you optimize code, it generally will make the code harder to read, harder to debug, make some pretty disgusting stack traces. And for that, I do apologize. If anybody's trying to learn about how the operating system works and they're looking into the code, part of it is that my code isn't necessarily very attractive, but the other part is keep in mind that these libraries for boot were optimized for memory, and a lot of times just crazy things happened to make that possible. So here we have the, I don't know why this slide is here. It's showing tier 1.5 highlight here. Let me check my notes. Yeah, that's a little bit out of place. That's okay. We're going to move on to the next. I love the tomatoes. You guys are wonderful. Well, it's not going to load the EEPROM image. I'm not sure about that. That's okay. We don't need the image of the EEPROM. So another question that comes up is, what is the Lua EEPROM? What does it provide for us? And it does 4 basic things, real quick. This question came up in some tutorials that I was watching, not by Mighty Pirates, but actually somebody else was doing a spotlight. And they didn't understand the difference between EEPROM and the Lua EEPROM. And the reason this is important is because the little EEPROM is a tiny little chip that can hold just a little bit of memory, a little bit of code. You can put it on your devices, and if you want to sneak programs in there, you actually could without even needing a hard drive. So what is the Lua EEPROM, the thing that you can boot? 4 things. 1, it binds the first GPU and the first screen that it can find, so that when you start rendering to the GPU, any way to fix mumble link? Oh, sorry about that. I don't know, Sapphire.
Turn it off.
It'll bind the first GPU and bind the first screen that it finds, so that when you render to the GPU, it'll work. The next thing is that it finds the first file system that has an init Lua that it can run, or which is the boot address. It tries the boot address first. It beeps, and then it calls init. So besides those things, there's nothing special about the Lua EEPROM. I mean, it assumes that you have a Lua CPU so that it can interpret the Lua code, But if you handle executing init.lua, then you can have your own EEPROM compatible with operating systems that expect that you have the Lua EEPROM. It's a very simple program. In fact, on the latest OpenOS, I'm going to get out of this. In fact, I should probably, if you guys can be patient, I'm going to turn off the button to chat on Mumble.
Tomato fight!
And my slides won't end. Brilliant. This is Bugs. Be right back. Okay. This will be easier now. I don't have to hold down a button. Why is it going to this screen? Oh, there we go. It's going to both. Okay. So that's probably enough about EEPROM. Let's start talking about some of the things that OpenOS can do. I'm going to let's make the resolution a bit better. So DevFS has been added, and this really is the beginning of many things that we can add to these dev points. For example, we do have the EEPROM here. This is all the code that's on the EEPROM itself. And in fact, you can edit the EEPROM from this DevFS point. It can act just like a normal file. So if you want to make edits to how your EEPROM works, you can open it up and edit here. You can save. It will write back to it. That's the idea of what the dev points are going to be. Some of them are going to be system information. Some of it is going to be act-like files that you can edit. This was actually a recent change to OpenOS. So we have EEPROM and EEPROM data. This EEPROM data is a small piece of memory that, for Lua EEPROM, is used for the boot address. Again, Lua EEPROM, like I was explaining, is just the thing that looks for the init.lua, but you can write your own. You can put anything you want in EEPROM data, but if you're using the Lua EEPROM, then it could write over it. So on this computer, we can see that the EEPROM data is this address, and this happens to be the address of the hard drive that booted the computer. So changing, for example, the computer boot address, wow, it's pretty slow. There we go. We'll change what EEPROM data is holding, because those are one and the same thing. This computer still won't have a problem booting, by the way. It'll just not find a hard drive with that name, and it will look for the next one that has an init.lua, because that's what the EEPROM code tells it to do. And you can change all that. So you can actually see here on the screen how it's going through all the file systems and looking for a file system that has an init. But just above that for loop, you see that it tries to use the one from the get boot address. So these things are all customizable. The other couple nice dev points in dev right now are null and random. Random pulls a bunch of crazy random values, but these are in bytes, so you can pull from that if you need to. Null, if people who have some time with the Linux bash shell or Linux environment get used to null things, you can just pipe into. And this brings me to one of the first things that brought me to OpenOS, and that was to standardize all input-output for all processes. And the reason that this really mattered to me was, in the beginning, I was trying to write a remote shell that would leverage all input-output for remote visualization and input of what you see from a process. And I noticed that there were so many places in OpenOS where it was a custom GPU write or a different path for input-output. And so now this has all been brought into one place, and dev null redirecting to dev null kind of shows that. So for example, if you were to try to here, let's go back to home. If you were to try to delete a file that doesn't exist, for example, you're going to get some red text. And I think people are familiar with this red text, but the special thing about this red text now is that it's going through standard error, whereas the other output is going through standard out. It's a different color, but more importantly, definitely more importantly, is that it's going through a standard I/O handle. So, for example, if you didn't want to see the error from a process, if you wanted it quiet, then you could redirect standard error, which is 2, into dev null, and then there would be no error output. Or if for whatever reason, let's say actually that you wanted to log all error messages, you could do a similar thing like this: redirect standard error to some temp file, and then you could look at it later, say, okay, what happened? What were the errors? And this is now possible because all input output is standardized. 2 being for standard error, 1 being for standard out, which is the same thing as, that's what's assumed if you don't have a number. You can also have a program that needs to read input. So for example, the install program, it's going to ask you a question, and I was going to cover a little bit about what install does in just a second. But for any program that you write that waits for input, this is standard in, for example. So if we were to, we're going to do something with the yes program, which lists words or the word yes a bunch of times. So I'm just going to say the yes program will repeat a word. So it's going to repeat no. And if we run that, if you pipe that into install, then basically you're saying no to everything a whole bunch of times. The first question was, that's beautiful. The first question was, make a selection, and no is not a valid response to that. So we're just going to reboot. We're going to pretend that didn't happen. So that's what redirecting input-output is for OpenOS. Everything's fine. That's right. Thanks. So I'm actually going through this super fast, and I've never made a presentation in Minecraft before. So does it run Doom yet? No, it doesn't run Doom. We definitely need to optimize how quickly we can render to the screen for that to happen. That's probably a good project for a mod or an add-on to this. Wait for Grease Monkey's panel. Exactly. So along with making standard input-output standardized, is that it came with that was the addition of popen. If I can get the keyboard to respond. There we go. Don't know why it's so slow. So we can redirect, we can pipe input. We have find and grep now. And along with all of this came popen. And what popen allows us to do is to run commands inside of one command. So for example, with these backticks, this does what's called a command substitution. So the command pwd prints where you are, but I can run that inside of a single command on the shell by using these backticks. And this all happens because of popen. And this type of work is underneath a lot of what OpenOS is doing now to get all the input output the same. There's a lot of other improvements with the shell, improved parsing so that you can get, well, it's not responding again. It's quite slow for some reason. I can just talk about it. But there's cleanup as far as where do you need your white space, other syntax. And one of the things that we might do in the future is extending the shell to allow even bash-like syntax for bash script code. There's an interest in doing that. Again, I run into the memory wall.
Oh. Server. Oh no, okay.
Is somebody removing my keyboard? Or swapping it out? I wonder why it's not responding. I think it's just a delay. I think I just have delay to BTM server. Alright, that's okay. I won't show the demo of that quite yet then. Oh, it has a range limit. Yeah. Oh, look at that.
Stick a keyboard in front of the screen.
Okay. While we're talking about keyboards and screens, one of the things I wanted to mention, or I was going to try to demo, but it's a little bit tricky to demo. One of the improvements for OpenOS is the ability for it to detect what screen it should connect to. What's interesting about BTM is
components connected to the computer.
It's rebooting now. I think we're okay. Yeah. Ah, thanks, Vex. You're right. It's at the click in the middle. Okay, sweet. So, one of the things that I noticed in some people doing spotlights of open computers, which by the way I love that people take the time to try to explain how to use this mod, is that they click on a screen and it doesn't give them the interface to type in it. That's always simply because there's not a keyboard. And one of the improvements to OpenOS, I'm going to run behind the screen here, because I think there was a computer. Oh yeah, look at all these keyboards. So, so right now I've removed all the keyboards. And, oh no, there is one hidden here. There we go. So now when I try to click on it, I can't open the screen. And a lot of times, for some reason, I see in the spotlights that people will break all the screens away, and they'll break all the keyboards away, and then try to hook it all back up. And sometimes they'll even reboot. And that's not necessary. OpenOS has an event system, which if you start making some really fun programs, you'll hook into that event system. And it's listening for components to be added. So as soon as I add this keyboard, I can use it again, and I can start typing again. Because it detected that keyboard, it's listening on that keyboard now right away. And in fact, there have been some pretty awesome bug fixes recently with OpenOS that I found because of BTM. Definitely some of the best bug bashing I've been able to do was in the last 3 weeks setting up for BTM.
Bug testing marathon.
That's right. It's been pretty awesome. So there's definitely some stability now in being able to swap out screens and swap out keyboards. And just to let people know, if you ever can't use a screen, but it looks like logically you should be able to, then report it as a bug. Because that's definitely something that OpenOS supports without having to reboot. Can we do multi-head, multi-keyboard setups? So out of OpenOS without any added scripts, no. OpenOS uses one screen as the main screen, full screen. Does it support doing multiple terminals? Yes, it's compatible with that. But there's no multiple terminal library built into OpenOS. There was a member of the community, NPMXYZ, who has been making some awesome progress with that. And I'm hoping to one day get that code ready to a point where I would consider it an OpenOS library. But it's complicated, but it does support, it's compatible. That's the important part. In fact, the term library has been completely rewritten, mainly for memory optimizations, but I always had in mind multiple screens or multiple terminal compatibility. And in fact, in my demo booth, I'm using multiple screens. You don't see it, but this is one of the demos that I'm running in the demo booth. So you'll see at the top, it's got wide text. I'm actually using Unicode for wide for the wider text. It's not like a resolution trickery, although it kind of looks like it. And there's a second window below. What exactly is delay loading? I'll go back to that. Thank you. I kind of skipped it. So this program is using two windows. It doesn't have like a border, so you can't see the window. But this is none of this code changes core libraries to OpenOS. I'm just. Oh, I got kicked.
Crashing.
Yeah, okay.
Oh no.
There we go.
Well, this is actually
So
good
what's
because
delay loading?
this time it ended up pushing a fix to our Forge patch, so it shouldn't crash with the same exception again.
Yeah, it's
Everything is fine now. This is
I would like my car the line is complete for radar. This is not a fast.
Finally, you're bottom and so everyone is quiet. Because you have shot already.
Someone take that away. There we go.
It's up!
Don't say
it's a
that,
dangerous
because now it will
thing, so-
crash again.
Excellent.
I need to make a mod that throttles logins.
Yeah,
You need to make a mod that automatically knows when people are saying it's up. Kidding, that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, who predicted that?
Did it break again?
Yes.
Yeah.
it was me.
God. If it says server is still
RF
restarting,
Tools is exploding the server again.
literally wait 10 seconds.
I'm not gonna tell you when it's up this time. But remember, everything's fine.
I'm surprised by the amount of issues we've had with RF Tools this time. Usually RF Tools is pretty good.
Yeah, Arctos is usually one of the more reliable mods. I know that last BTM we've had a massive amount of issues with Android add-ins.
MCGT's just been on vacation for like a week, so he's only just getting back. I'm sure that there's some random things still about.
Did it crash again?
Yep.
No.
Think
The server is still
It
starting.
did, with the same
then
exception again from the same mod.
Yeah.
What mod?
Which
What
mod?
mod? What exception?
RF Tools.
Just get rid of it
Yeah.
for now.
It's
That's what we did
teleporters
yesterday,
everywhere.
and we had to repair all the booths that use the RF Tools teleporters.
Yes, and you've repaired them, so now get rid of the mod.
No, there are still some booths who have to teleport us again.
Just take a backup, and then we can finish the panel and then restore the backup afterwards.
I guess I'll just tell people to stop building. I'll do that.
What is crashing from RF Tools?
Teleporters NPE because some player has a null bounding box. McJitty thought he fixed this, but apparently not.
Wow.
McChitty.
Wait, null bounding box? How's that possible?
Actually,
That's not technically legal, but RF Tools is the only mod I've seen that crashes when it happens.
What mod even makes
Or-
null bounding boxes?
or can you not disable the specific block in RF tools that causes the error?
I don't have a list. Oh wait, no. It's in the stack trace, and that's the teleporter. And we're going to have a similar issue removing the teleporter as we would removing RF Tools.
RF tools is open source, isn't it?
Yeah. However you pronounce your name, that update was made on my request, and it's on the server already.
194.
How many spigots done connection throttling?
I don't know, and I also don't really care because you can't really run a Forge server on Spigot. At least you shouldn't.
Yeah.
So could you, whatever.
We could hack Forge if you give us the
Yeah, I just saw you send that.
Okay.
Can't we replace
You could
all
also
the
just check for players with null bounding boxes or whatever the hell this problem is, and just fix it.
Can't we replace all the teleporters with command blocks?
That's what we did yesterday, and since we thought RF tools was fixed, we went back and replaced all the command blocks with matter transporters again because they'd look better.
In that case, what build exactly are we using right now?
507A, I think.
It was released 11 hours ago. I need to know the version number because otherwise the server won't work.
Yeah, 5.07a.
And could you send me the stack trace?
I'm going to turn on remove erring entities and tile entities. I turned it off a few days ago because we were having some issues with it.
Yeah, it generally causes issues, but I've always kept it enabled as it causes less issues than it fixes. Anyhow, actually I guess you could just... yeah, just finish the panel. I'm going to try to fix it by the end of the panel. Ah yes, 5.07a fixed a different thing. It fixed player being null, but not bounding box.
Oh, well, I thought McDiddy said something about bounding boxes. Okay.
No, nothing was done with bounding boxes, so I'm gonna do that real quick.
Possibly. Server's back, but you didn't hear that from me.
Wow.
Welcome back. People are still logging in.
I will log in later too.
Hooray, I logged in the void.
So I wonder. So I'm wondering how easier this would be if I had like a VR headset on.
Minecraft. BTM with VR headset. This would be cool.
Yeah.
Because you could really walk around here. Especially with the HTC Vive.
That's also part of the next one crash every panel,
So yeah, I was saying in the BTM channel, this is way harder than real life presentations. I give real life presentations at work, and those are easy compared to this. Yeah,
I always figured it would be the other way around.
I'm just going so fast. I don't even know what I've said. Maybe because I care what you guys think, and I don't really care what people at work think. I don't know.
Wow.
Okay.
I know you care.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we have 24 minutes left. Okay, I was just making sure.
So I think I can summarize what I was trying to say with the advanced piping and command substitutions, and generally just a lot of new bin utilities. Is there a new keyboard on the other side now? Somebody may have added a second keyboard. No?
There is one on the side, on the left side.
It is running. Oh, I'm crashing.
Sandar logged in the server for us.
Oh.
There we go, it's back.
I have a fix. I have a fix for this. Almost.
I noticed no one was moving. I was like, yeah, here we go again. Oh, that was my client.
I'm building now.
I have a fix as well.
Well, I have a fix in two places. I spotted another one wanted to crash for the same reason. So, just a second.
Hey, an legal argument exception from Jizzles and Bits.
Oh. Anyhow, I'm uploading mine in a second.
Also,
He's
apparently
spelling
something to
LS
do with
there.
better with mods.
Okay, I have it uploaded. There we go. This one should work. Unscribed.
Sure. Just I already fixed it with otherwise, but okay.
Yeah, I have two fixes.
Alright.
No, basically, I'm trying to help because in our tradition, guests and other participants were historically helping out with BTM. But trust me, fixing a single block is not doing BTM. I am Yay.
Shall I begin?
Yeah.
Okay. Input, output, standardized, command substitutions. We have the dev points. Something else to mention, LSHW, which on this resolution doesn't look so great. Oops. I think maybe Vexito Sangar would disagree with me, but I think the majority of the work that went into making this command work was the debate about what information should be available from device info. So what we've added to Open Computers, and that OpenOS is now consuming thanks to LSHW, is that the devices, the components that are available to the computer can be queried. And they have some basic hardware information that they report, such as address, class, description, product, and some have more fields. For example, file systems might talk about, or I should say screens might talk about what type of screen they are, or the memory will talk about what class of memory they are, although I guess that's class. But every device can now have a little bit more information about it. This information in the future may become more dev point information, so that the dev file system can show what file systems are available. We could use this information so that your programs can know what type of processor is in the computer. So this is really the beginning of being able to make much more computer-aware programs. This is where we should be able to pull that information, or at least show it in a more interesting way. Because up till now, it's been a little bit difficult for a program to know what it's running on. And so we're trying to move away from that. At least that's what this should be able to provide. If there was more that Sangar wanted to mention about where we can go with this, I'll let him talk about it. This has not been my contribution, I will say. This was definitely other people's work. So the other thing that we want to show, an improvement that we've made to the experience of using Open Computers, is the install program. So on this particular machine, if we, actually I'll show it through mount. Right now we have all of these dev points. Temp and dev don't really count, or sorry, all these mount points. Temp and dev don't count for what I'm trying to say. We've got an OPPM floppy that's in there. You can see that it's read-only mode. And then we've got, looks like 2 hard drives, one with the address D29, and then the root file system 7FE. So if we were to go into D29, it's just a screensaver Lua file system, and if I were to check the drive, we have, oh, that's a floppy. It's a floppy. So what we can do with okay. The reason I was looking into that information is because install tries to intelligently figure out what you want to do by just typing install. So that resolution is pretty small. This program does not need that much resolution. So we'll go with, I don't know, how does 40 look? Is everything okay? Did we lose it?
No clue.
We might have lost it.
Yeah, it's not blinking. That's usually a bad sign.
My chat messages are not coming through.
You guys see me flying across the screen?
No.
Aw.
I think the server died then.
Yep.
Server just keep up.
There it goes.
I'm so sorry.
And I'm not sure. Oh, it's back now.
It just booted everyone off.
CNC, whatever. I checked console says the chat line. JCat 4.
I feel timed out.
It's because everyone joined simultaneously. Because I made the mistake of telling people when the server was back up.
Okay, the computer's back up. To set the resolution.
Okay, thanks. So install tries to figure out what you want to install. While I'm logging back in, I'm just going to try to explain that. Install will look for what things are available for install. For example, if you put in a floppy disk with OpenOS, or if you put in a floppy disk that has the data programs, then install will find it and then determine where you're trying to install it to. And
oh, there goes the server again.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So I'm going to demonstrate that once we all get back in. But the complexity of install is that it could find multiple things to install, and it could find multiple places to install it. That's what we're trying to simplify with the new install.
JCat, don't log in yet.
Too late. It's flopping again. It's dead again. I think
Yeah,
you're
I don't
running
think
out.
it's-
I think you're running out of network.
The server has a gigabit up and down. In fact, the server is currently asleep because the Minecraft thread has frozen.
Ah.
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 Every time JCat logs in, I get a sampler stall report, and then the server freezes after about a minute.
Remove his player data. Remove his player data.
That's what I was doing,
Yeah.
and then he logged in again.
Then ban him, remove his player data, and then pardon him.
There, I removed the player data.
To think that a single player can bring down the entirety of BTM.
Well, I did teleport him to a pretty weird spot.
Why would you do that? What?
He was flying in front of the panel.
Why did you teleport him to a stuff which destroyed the entire panel?
It was just a random number?
Congratulations. See, if I were hosting BTM,
You won the shop lottery.
people would not only be flying in front of the panel, they would be throwing monsters and swords and magic spells in front of the panel.
And building trains.
Even I did that, honestly.
For the record, I haven't been responsible for keeping people in line, or I've been like yelling at people for being too annoying. They just haven't been being annoying.
I noticed the tomato button has vanished.
It's working.
I didn't build the tomato button. I don't know who did. I actually built the tomato button.
Knowing you, that's accurate.
Like, of all the people watching the panels, I'm probably the least in control person who's the most likely to cause trouble.
Wow.
Which is why I'm in spectator.
I'm just in spectator because somebody teleported me into the side because I was in the way. So I'm spectator and went back in the way, but nobody can see me, so it doesn't matter.
Someone fell out of the world.
Excellent.
Yep, every time I log in, I end up
It's
on this
blinking
panel.
at least.
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
Alright, so what makes
Yeah,
install?
today I learned that the cursor blinking in open computers requires a server round trip.
That's actually good this time.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think we need like a minute or two for everyone to calm down.
Yeah, the, oh, you mean, okay, sure.
And we probably need a recap as everyone's less focused by now.
The cursor blink requires a round trip because it's actually writing a new it's writing a new character there.
Why, but at the same time, Open Computers is trying to emulate the existing terminal stuff to an extent. And with real virtual terminals, cursor blinking is client-side.
True, true.
Also, for anyone who's recording right now, please, when you're uploading this to YouTube, edit the crashes out. Please.
What about the crashes where Parnell's talking in them?
Legitimate organization.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything important. I'll go over that again.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. The reason install requires or it deserves a little bit of time because it's been greatly improved. What it's trying to solve is the problem of what are you trying to install and where do you want to install it. In most cases, the choice is simple. You're just trying to add an installation to your computer. You know, you have a data program on the floppy that you want to add to your computer, or you're using the the maze program and you want to install it. There's a whole collection of loot disks, or even you can create your own disks that you want to allow users to install from. And then the choice of where to install it should be simple. You have typically one hard drive in your computer, and it's your root file system. But the choice can get complicated, and so install needs to show you those options, and that's where it gets a little bit different. So it looks like Vexitos has put in a bunch of different floppies in here. So we have the tape program that's mounted. We have the explode program. OPPM is in a floppy that's also in the computer, and then the D29 looks to be just another hard drive. And so it's asking, what do you want to install? Because there are files on all of these systems that you might want to add to your computer. The wording is important. What do you want to install? So it's finding things that can be installed. Too many components.
Facts.
Is he booting it back up? We don't need all the keyboards. Let's just have one keyboard. Besides, I don't really support multiple keyboards. I only support one. That might be a problem I have to look at later. So let's run install again. Actually, the resolution, I think I liked it at 8025. Yeah. So for example, if I chose the Maze program, where do you want to install it? There was a second hard drive, or actually it's a floppy, but it found a second file system that we could install to. It will show you the label or the address to begin with, and then it will tell you at. That's telling you where it's mounted. And that can be very helpful because you can see that the root file system is just going to be that /. That will tell you that's the file system that your computer is running from. That's where your operating system is. So if the choice here is confusing, you'd want to pick the one. Generally, the idea is you want to pick the one that your computer is running off of, and that would be the root file system. If we chose number 2, it would be copying the files that you picked, because we picked the Maze program. Yeah, thank you. It would be installing the Maze program to your selection here. So if we picked, for example, oh, I got kicked.
Real.
Same here.
Yep.
I think it broke.
Invalid chunks.
My favorite part is that whenever somebody loads that broken chunk, it spams the console with keeping entity harvestfestival.npc with existing UUID. So I scrolled up to see what the error was.
How did he get back there? I thought you deleted his player data.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't JCat in the first place.
Well, as soon as he joined, we crashed again.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you deleted his player data right then.
What's causing the issue?
I'm talking. How clear is my voice? I just got a new mic for this thing.
Perfectly clear.
It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, you can pull me to a bit.
Okay, I deleted all of his bobbles data, I deleted his APRS data, his Arborist data, and everything. I did a search for all files containing his UUID and his name and deleted them.
Is it up yet?
Yeah.
Shouldn't have said that.
Been up for ages.
Been up for ages.
That doesn't sound good.
Is that lightning?
JCat, could you please wait until the end of the panel? It's not long, is it?
I think it should be fine.
We have
now.
we have cursor blink, so I'm good.
I noticed EEPROM and EEPROM data don't show up in my
Please,
single player
no.
world. Is that a config option?
We don't need that lightning.
Brandon, that's a good question. Are you on the 1.6 beta 4?
I am on dev build, I think. This is in my dev environment. I'll check.
It should show up. Might be on an older version. Anyways, I actually do have to make a bug fix for EEPROM. Again, another thing I found in BTM. Does anybody know about the locked EEPROMs?
No.
Oh.
So, anyways, over in the Open Computer competition terminals, those computers have what are called locked EEPROMs. I've never even heard of them, but they don't allow me to create proxies, and it causes DevFS to crash. So I will be having to fix that at some other point. Also, it actually is...
Someone logged in and I got the keeping entity NPC thing
It's
again.
JCat. He somehow didn't get rid of his player data.
I deleted everything.
It's still there.
Just
Is it
search.
Yeah,
Is it stored in a file with other...
Disconnected.
No.
Wow.
Also, who's doing the lightning?
Yeah, please don't do the lightning. It's just disruptive and annoying.
Someone's just spamming a lightning sigil or something like that.
I'm running Open Computers 1603 beta 4, by the way.
So what's the deal with JCat? Where could his position be stored?
He says he
I'm
has
currently
his full
doing a grep on
inventory as
every
well.
file for his UUID.
But it might be stored in hex as well, and not just a string. Might
It should
stored
be
as
under
num-
world player
It's searching
data.
binary files as well.
It should be world player data.
I already deleted that
You got
file, and I'm sure I got
You
his
got the
UUID right. I looked it up.
Sir. You got MDT Explorer.
And is Minecraft in its most recent versions not caching that? Are you sure?
My what isn't caching it? Sorry.
The player data.
That doesn't make sense.
He still has
Huh?
his inventory, so where would his inventory be stored otherwise?
If he was logged out, then it won't have the data in memory.
In 1.7, but in 1.9?
I haven't read the code in 1.9, but there's no reason it should have changed.
Well, half the server API code changed in 1.9 for the Realm stuff. So,
I don't know. Do we want me to restart the server and delete his player data?
I'd say
Just to be absolutely sure.
I'd say yes, and keep searching for the UID in the meantime.
No, just check IRC, please.
Okay, well.
I'll check IRC.
Honest God, I'm just gonna inhabit your automaton for the rest of the con because I have trouble moving on my own.
Hey,
Never
we have a
mind.
new build of RF tools, by the way.
Okay, I'll install it soon. Be right back.
If you had some way for automatons to pick people up, that would be even more amusing because then it could carry me around. Should definitely add that as a feature of automatons.
Okay, server starting. Is it better today than it was yesterday?
Who knows?
I'd say so.
I'm trying to figure it out briefly.
Well, yesterday was just crashing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the RF teleporters were removed, so half the boot weren't accessible anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
Hmm.
And then MC GTI comes in like 2 hours later after. It wasn't my fault. Don't blame me.
I already sent a pull request. He has no excuse.
What
He's
was
in
wrong?
RC. He's working on it.
Yeah,
But I
he's
sent him a
already
pull
pushed it.
request.
So what was the problem, by the way? Why did his
Everything.
mod get removed?
Because every time it was loading, there was like a player stuck in a teleporter, and it was causing a crash. It was
Oh, I see.
weird.
Hmm.
That's probably the unluckiest crash ever, though.
Yeah.
Hughes, I'm inhabiting Cole's automaton because I have trouble moving on my own. Because I lag so much.
So I'll start up again. Now, Brandon had the question about where is his EEPROM dev point. Sounds like a bug. It doesn't make sense to me. It should be there in that build. That offline, I suppose, through GitHub. But that's definitely something that should be there. I will be making improvements to EEPROM dev point because of the problems I mentioned. Locked EEPROM.
Okay, I checked. It's not caching yet.
So anyways, we should look into that more afterwards.
So the JC thing, it's not caching yet. I have to verify.
Nice.
So I've decided that if something's going to obscurely crash, it's going to obscurely crash at BTM.
And that's good.
Obscure crash. Wow.
Be right back, changing my username. Obscure crash
Why?
is a nice one.
To be fair, this whole convention, I've been trying to change my in-game username because I have a completely different username, and like no one's recognizing me.
Is it just me or is it gonna work fine this time?
It'll work just fine. Alright, I'm going to begin.
This is fine.
So we have
Everything is fine.
we have install going here, and I'm just going to finish it off. So we're going to let the maze program install to the root file system. Quick mention here about this little notation, which was new to some people, but it's actually a Linux command line cultural way of doing things. This capital Y/N. First of all, yes, it does show you the two different inputs you can give, yes or no. More importantly, well, I guess that's the more important part. Perhaps important but less importantly, the capital letter is the default. So if you just press enter, for example, then it will take the default. Tells you what was copied, installation complete. Now this is a complex example of install, to be honest. There were multiple things to select from. There were multiple targets to choose from. This is the weirdest or most complicated install should get at this point. I should mention now that install does allow you to write your own special install scripts. It will call them if it's named .install. This is a detail that the documentation should improve on that isn't very well defined documentation yet. That feature is there.
Example.
Yeah, that's right.
We can.
Yeah, doesn't OPPM have its custom install ready? So another nice thing about install is that you can give it an argument, which will be the name. In fact, let me clear the screen.
Whoa, I'm rubber banding again. God damn it.
Of course. That looks like it's out of memory. How much memory does the system have? Enough. All right, I'll log that one for another day. So here we're gonna pretend that didn't happen. So if we choose OPPM, oh, not the. Then when I install it, it will, first it confirms, then it will run the OPPM installer. Done this before. Main point I want to make is that when a floppy has its own custom installer script, the installer will invoke it. If it doesn't, which almost everything does not have a custom installer, it will just copy all the files. So the quick demo that I wanted to show with install is what you should expect to see. Grabbing myself a brand new OpenOS floppy disk. I have a completely blank hard drive. Pop out these floppies. In an OpenOS floppy. Blank hard drive. Hopefully it's blank. Yep. So unless I've missed something, this should be experience. Make a brand new computer. Got your OpenOS floppy disk in the disk drive. Got a blank hard drive. Okay, good. Couple things to notice here. So again, this should be your first experience with Open Computers. After you've crafted your screen, after you've crafted your computer case, the memory, the CPU, you put in a floppy disk with OpenOS. Install loot disk. Or sorry, the OpenOS floppy, the loot disk that has OpenOS on it, and a blank hard drive. This is what you should expect to see. It boots up, and when you type mount, see the root file system, just that / is read-only. That's because it's running off of the floppy. If I were to try to create a file, let's say touch is a Linux command that will create a file if it doesn't exist. Cannot touch file, permission denied. Because you're on a read-only file system, you can't change anything about the files on this computer because this is the install disk. So we want to install everything. If you look in mount, there's 2 mounts in here. One is the floppy disk, the other one is the hard drive. We don't need to worry about this complexity. All a user has to do, turn on the Open Computers computer, just type the word install. Why are there 2? Allow me to check what's there. Example of what it will look like when there's nothing. Ah, there's these files in there. Delete people's crap. I don't know what those disks were. Just for this demo, I want to show what it would look like when there's no files. So I'm going to make sure I have a blank.
Are you going to be implementing any way to file systems read-only?
Am I going to implement a way so that file systems can be mounted read-only?
Yeah.
It would be easy to emulate in OpenOS. And I've thought about this, but I would really prefer it to be a feature of Open Computers. So if Songar's got a mic, he can speak to whether he's interested in supporting that from the computer level. As an emulated read-only file system is not as interesting to me as truly mounted read-only.
I break my tablet.
But yes, I would like to do that. Okay, here we go. Looks like we've got a file system that has no files on it. So we've booted from the floppy, and there should be no files on this thing here. That is correct. Alright, so here we have an example of what I was trying to say before. Oh, I forget. I apologize. The resolution is... That's exactly what you should expect to see. There shouldn't be any complexity with what's going to be installed, where to install it. All of that is the complex advanced situation where you've got multiple drives and multiple floppies all at once. But what we want the users to see is this. Just put in a blank drive and you have the one floppy in the computer which has the OpenOS operating system on it. Press enter. Copy all the files over. When it's done copying all the files, it will set the boot address. It's the label so that the hard drive doesn't have to show its long address and all the prompts. Instead, it can say, hey, I've got OpenOS on me, and it's good to go. This is really similar to the experience we had in OpenOS 1.5. A little bit of it has been simplified, and a little bit of it has been made more complicated if the situation is more complicated. And the reason we did that, okay, ready, it's ready to reboot now. The reason we did that is because we want experience of using components make more sense with software. I believe Sangar may have coined the term magic file systems. He wanted to move away from magic file systems so that when you put in a data card into your computer, we didn't want there to be files that would just magically show up. But instead, if you want extra special software that was designed for the data card, then you should get the data loot disk. Put the data loot disk in and install its special software. The data cards, all of the cards work without special software. The special software are just helpful programs. It just makes it so that these little special scripts that people have, that we've written to make these tools easier to use. But it's kind of like you plug in a printer, and most likely your computer can talk to the printer just fine, print out pages. But if you go and get, the advanced printer software, so you have this pretty user interface and all these extra tools, you can do that. That's the same thing we are trying to do with the install disks. So I think that's enough about install at this point. Important topic because people ask the question, what are all these loot disks for? How do we get the software on? It should just be as simple as getting the loot disk, putting it in, and typing install. So one of the notes that I have here that I wanted to mention is when I was actually watching the Direwolf Let's Play that had open computers in it, one thing I was concerned about was there was a little bit of misunderstanding about how to get these loot disks. And I'm interested in open computers one day having the ability to create loot disks using the components. And that might happen. But for right now, probably going into the future, again, I would like Sangar to speak to this because this would be his decision ultimately, is that we have the ability to cycle through all of the loot disks. So by using just a wrench in your hand and one of the loot disks, you can cycle through them. So say you wanted the OpenOS disk. Okay, Sangar says, crafting the floppy with the component is planned. Okay. So if you want the internet disk, by the way, this is a brand new install of OpenOS. And we have in here wget, and we have pastebin. Because the discussion about whether or not these should be core to OpenOS caused quite a lot of, let's say, heated debate. So they've been added back in. But besides that, so you do still need an internet card for those to work. But you have the programs there by default. You don't have to install them anymore. But curl. Yeah, we don't have curl. But if you want software for the data card or any of the other cards, like the Redstone card, then the extra software would be on a loot disk. And you can cycle through them with a wrench. And perhaps one day we'll have the feature to create them with the component. Floppy in and you type install. Okay, we're going to move on. There have been questions in the channel about what delay load does. And actually, I think the way I want to demonstrate it really quickly for you, how cool delay load is. This works. I can fix that. It'll be worth it if I can get this working. Just one sec. Ah, see, call boundary. All right, so this is a test program that I write in the emulator, and this program doesn't have to work in the real game, so it's okay. This actually isn't a bug that I need to worry about, fortunately. But what I was hoping to show you was I wrote a program for my own testing, and what it would show if we weren't in Minecraft is all of the libraries and all of their functions that can be delayed. So for example, there's a function in the term library called clearline. I apologize that, again, my resolution is horrible for this. No, actually what I should do, write this to the, how about I come up with a real command, echo. If you don't mind me switching topics really fast, there's a program called, or sorry, there's a file under home called shrc. This is a list of commands that will be run when your shell is first loaded. So I just put in the resolution 8025 so that when the computer reboots, as soon as it gets to shell, it'll run that. The feature that a lot of people have asked for. They continue to ask, hey, how do I get programs to run right when the computer boots up? Use the .shrc file. So I don't care that this is crashing. Here is, now it's talking about a library called transforms, and there are functions in here that are not loaded, but they're available. So there's a transforms.where, partition, find, at. By the way, the transforms library, it's a lower level library that I wrote to make the shell much more advanced with parsing the text that you're trying to write. It really simplified the sh library. Anyways, a lot of the functions are not needed for boot. They're needed for more advanced things. For example, if you're trying to echo hi and say and echo OK, that works now. And a lot of this advanced parsing is possible because of the transforms library. Also, the spacing is optional where it should be optional. That works as well. And that's possible again because of the transforms library. But if I were to try to load all of the transforms library at boot, oh hey, look, I got rid of the C call that was necessary. If I loaded everything at boot, then the memory requirements of OpenOS would definitely be higher than we can fit on a tier 1 RAM stick. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned it because we got interrupted a couple times. But one of the points that I wanted to make was that we wanted 50K of memory available for OpenOS on a 1.5 tier RAM stick, and because of all the optimizations that we were able to make, OpenOS can now actually run on a single stick, tier 1 RAM stick, and install on it, which is a little bit of black magic to make that work. And a lot of it has to do with the delay load system. So here you can see that, like for example, new memory stream, this function right here, it's not loaded. Well, new memory stream isn't needed unless this happens to be a... Who keeps writing? The memory stream stuff is what makes the pipes work. So, for example, to be able to echo pipe into grep, the reason that works is because of that new memory stream. Probably stop typing while I'm trying to type. And now you can see a whole bunch more stuff had to load to make that happen. So the amount of memory that was available on this system just got eaten up simply because of a command. And this was an experience that I wanted for the user so that just booting into OpenOS didn't require all of the functionality unless you start to use it. So for example, hint handler implement. Well, that's let's look actually at text pad left. So if we were to use text pad left, for example, well, I used it wrong. I forgot the other argument. That doesn't really matter. My point is that I tried to use that function and it was available, and now it's been loaded. So if you look at text pad left, it's now been loaded. That's my little plus sign right there. That's delay load. It does make the code. Yeah, we should actually grep for what's not loaded. Still a lot of stuff that's not loaded. Lots of stuff. But if you have a bug, one of these functions, it makes the call stack look kind of weird. And that's because it's not loading serial kind of way. but that's okay. I did that to save memory, so that makes it worth it. Alright. Checking my notes. I think I've covered the most important parts of what I wanted to talk about. Does the delay does the delay module include profiling, like number of executions? I'm sorry, can you rephrase that? I'm not sure what you're trying to ask there.
I think what he means is, if you run a large function once, is it planned to have some kind of like garbage collection for the delay loader?
I actually initially implemented delay loading with caching, garbage collecting, cleaning up later, and I thought it was a great idea, and it worked. The problem was that libraries that big, expensive functions all the time, constantly having to reload that data from the disk. Because of how the Lua garbage collector worked, it didn't really give me the option of how weak. If there are ideas that the community has about how to offload expensive functions without using Lua's weak referencing, but something more customized, I'm open to those suggestions. But
wrapping functions?
Wrapping functions?
Yes, like you wrap a function to keep track of how often it's called.
Oh, and then increase its and then promote it, essentially.
Yes, and keep track of how often it's called. You could do things like that way.
Sure.
I was actually thinking more on the lines of you're trying to optimize boot, and let's say there's an expensive function you call once, but there's 2 or 3 lower functions you've already called 10 times. Is there a way like that you've profiled through this stuff, or is it just you read the code and you learned that this expensive function you don't need to load at boot, and you just use some 3 or 4 other low-level functions used 10 times already, just to optimize for memory usage?
Oh yeah, I've definitely done that. That's where a lot of the savings come from, where there could be a function call to the buffer library, for example, but I realize, gosh, I only call that function once, and really all I'm trying to do is read the first line from that file. I'll just hard code it in, so I don't have to load all that function in. Yes, that's a lot of the optimizations came that way. And so if you look at the code, you might think, wow, why is he doing this by hand? There's library functions to do that. A lot of the reason is because of memory.
Another question I had is, so you're not the first that's looked into this. I know a lot of people that have, and I even looked into doing something, not the delay stuff, but the save memory, make the boot system more interesting, make it more POSIX compliant, I think. And so is there more of a correct abstraction for processes inside of OpenOS yet?
A little bit. So that's where all of the input-output goes, is through the process metadata.
Yeah, and that's what that was one of the things I was looking at. I was like, oh yeah, you can't do it because there's no process metadata. There's no way to keep track of everything. So
yeah, we're moving in that direction. A lot of the improvements to process metadata had big memory costs, and I remember at the time I was working on it, it just wasn't worth the cost. I've created a little bit more buffer room, wiggle room, I guess you could say, where future process improvements are probably more likely now, without making tier 1 RAM completely impossible. Yeah, it's all about the process metadata. It's even to have child processes and some type of tree and able to kill processes, for example, something that I can do in emulated environments that I have not pushed into the core OpenOS yet. But yes, in fact,
excellent. That's great.
popen, which seems like a simple thing, but by the way, it took my entire Christmas vacation to make popen. I don't know if Magic's on the line listening to all this, but he implemented a similar thing to get popen to work, and and maybe other things in Plan9K that I'm not aware of, but it's an entirely custom coroutine library that hijacks how coroutines work, and that was difficult. And and actually quite enjoyable to figure out. But because of that, the process metadata allows us, if we want to in the future, and now I'm being recorded, so I probably shouldn't commit to this kind of stuff, but because the coroutine library can be fully hijacked and emulated now, yes, I could create a process list, process families, killing, sending special signals to different processes, multiple processes at once, although it's not true concurrency, but you know, it can be emulated because we essentially own the coroutine library.
Oh, I see. You're just since you own it on a per process level, you could keep that in the metadata as they create new coroutines.
Yep. And that's necessary for popen. So it's all there. It's being used every time popen is called.
That's kind of exciting, actually.
It gets me excited. Maybe one reason why I haven't implemented it yet is because popen was so hard to make that it kind of burned me out, to be honest. And it's so easy to break that I know that it's solid right now, but in case I find an edge case of a feature that I need, it's a hard thing to debug. That's what I'm trying to say. It's really hard to debug.
So another thing that I've kind of noticed, like Open Computers, the Lua operating system stuff, this is probably more of an abstract, less directly to you question, but has anyone ran this on physical hardware and finds that an interesting, problem to solve? Because it's kind of getting to the point where that, could be a really clever hacker OS.
It has been done. Ish.
Nice.
Magic and I only helped out for a bit. We work on LoopPay, which was a project to run OpenOS directly as a shell on top of the Linux kernel with nothing else running. And it actually exists. It works mostly fine. It runs on the Raspberry Pi. I've run it on my ThinkPad. I've also run it on the Zipit Z2, which is a really cool old Linux device.
I'm familiar with that one.
Nice.
Yeah, so it has been all done-ish. We use the Linux kernel for it, but from there it's not that far to code a simple microkernel that would run OpenOS and use that framework.
That's a good question.
I do have some questions, I admit, but I'm waiting for the Sanger panel for them mostly, because they're related to Open Computers.
Celine. So I think that anything else that I wanted to cover actually should be running in the booths. For example, this is the advanced command substitution demo that's running in the booth, and it tries to talk through. Could I show the PIO tests? The code, no, because it's horrible. Although it's all on GitHub, so.
I think we should.
Yeah, I think we should wrap up. The only thing I want to direct people to was that if you had more questions about what OpenOS shell supports, go to the demos. I actually spent quite a lot of time on these. The top part of the demo will be a description of what's going on, and then I have actually a sub window running. These commands are actually running against the hardware. Show you all the new features that have been added, or at least a lot of them. Find me on OC channel on Espernet. I visit the GitHub for new issues pretty much every single day. Yeah, again, thank you for letting me be a part of this.
And thank you for helping make OpenOS even better. We appreciate it, I promise.